something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast. We just had something go right over the top of us that looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast.
Okay, so here we are at our 5th episode of our RichPlanet Mars marathon, and Rich is just summing up in this video the evidence we've seen in the last 4 episodes, and we're just going to take a look at now a bit more evidence over the next 4 shows, and the conclusion of all of this, of course, is when we get a response from NASA, which is very unusual to get a response.
True, but just may I add that throughout the episodes that we've covered so far, we've kind of agreed with some points and disagreed with others. Obviously, we're trying to take a neutral perspective on this, but so far the evidence is starting to pile up against there being a rover so far. But you know,
I still think it's pretty 50-50.
It's 50-50.
I think there's a lot of evidence we've looked at so far that really isn't that convincing. I mean, I think we're skipping Richard's intro here, but like the things that are really big deal for me are the lemming. I mean, the lemming. I do not believe the lemming is a collection of rocks from a funny angle. Firstly, because that is one of the very few animals you would actually find on Devon Island where they do the testing. And what are the chances of a rock looking like one of those animals?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only about 5 animals on the whole island.
Yeah.
Then there's the walrus arm bone, which to me is, if it had been a zebra, I think it was the other week, if it had been a zebra femur, you'd be like, okay, it's just something that looks like a bone.
Yeah. I mean, on the other end of it, I mean, the things that aren't convincing are, you know, they can criticise the tests and so forth that were done, but you're only limited to the footage you're shown, so you can only speculate on what test they're doing and if this is real testing or whatever. For me, you need more evidence to support an argument that certain tests shouldn't be done this way or should be done that way. There's some limitations to that. I think the test grounds as well, where they're testing it in regards to the NASA sites,
the Mars yard.
The Mars yard. I mean, I'm not convinced by those. So I mean, we've got to give it an even kilter here. To
me, the thing about the testing is that out of all the researchers online, Richard is probably more qualified to know about that than any other, having done it for 20 years.
Oh, I agree, but with the imagery that he is exposed to and the public are exposed to, we're limited to know what tests they are.
Those points that he makes about there being no separate test department to being, there's no way that you would do that. There's no way that you would have the people developing the system being allowed to find out what the tests are.
No. I agree to certain aspects of it, but he raised certain points regarding the footage that was shown that I just don't believe you can make a judgment on, because you're not really given the full information of exactly what's being tested and exactly what they're cheering for. You know, when you're doing a promotional video of whatever it is, could be whatever, you always show the best bits. You always show everyone congratulating each other because it's successful. You know, the public's money has been spent well, so everyone's happy. This is great. Now leave us alone to do our stuff. That's what I think they're doing there. I don't think they're going to give us the exact parameters and everything, because one, it's trade secrets. You don't want to give this away to the Russians and the Chinese on, you know, how to develop rovers and so forth, because
surely
that's
somebody
intellectual
from China,
property.
Surely somebody from China could phone up whoever makes any of those components and say, I want to buy 600 of those.
To be quite honest, half of them are probably made in China. So you know,
I don't really see that that's complete. This isn't a military operation.
No, it's not a military operation, but it's still the taxpayers' money going into technology that they want to keep hold of.
For my money, that means that every single part of every single test should be completely disclosed to the public.
Oh, in an ideal world, I agree with you, but it isn't, is it?
Well, I just don't understand
why isn't it?
I don't understand why that would be. I mean, to me, I think the testing is a really, really valid point. there are things like the lump of wood. I just don't think is even worth talking about. It's just it looks like a rock to me. I mean, it's possible it's a lump of wood, but I mean, it's so you just can't tell.
I agree with you there. That lump of wood's not convincing enough, but the bones are. The bones for me are interesting.
The bones
they're 50-50, but they're interesting. They're good points.
The bones, the lemming is to me just what. You know, to me, if I had the lemming problem and I was NASA, I would have said, "Yeah, sorry, we accidentally sent you a picture from Devon Island, and it had a lemming in it." You know, I mean, there's no other way out of that picture. That picture is a picture of a lemming.
Yeah, I don't. For me, what's quite interesting and goes against this is why put a red filter on the screens, and why is there a blue sky which seems to have vaporous
You see, now
things?
there's another.
There is something that for me really argues against the rover being where it's meant to be.
That is a really big problem.
That for me is really one of the bigger ones.
That's something.
But leading on to that, let's see what we got.
Well, yeah, certainly.
I think it's going to lead on to that anyway.
Looking at what we've got there, that sky in every way I can think about it.
Has atmosphere.
When you think about how close, you know, when you like, for instance, there was they did a test with a few tests, in fact, through the years, but I think it was in 1984 or something. They did a test with RAF Lightnings trying to intercept U2s, right? And the U2 was flying like 67,000 feet, and there was a really fast Lightning, XM729 or something. It's on one of the I can't remember the name of his videos, or excellent videos online. It flew up to a zoom height of 88,000 feet, right? Where the sky was completely black. 88,000 feet is 32,000 feet lower than you would have to climb to get to the pressure of Mars.
Right.
So it would be absolutely black.
Yeah,
it would be
complete
like being,
almost vacuum.
It would be completely black.
It's almost vacuum. It doesn't hold atmosphere.
So the idea that it would look anything like that at all, in my mind, is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it should be much closer to. It's much closer to the moon in terms of volume, in pressure, than it is to Earth.
Yeah.
So to me, it should look much more like the moon, and it's almost as if they're trying to give this impression that Mars is somehow inhabitable, when it most definitely is
looks
not.
habitable. It looks habitable from what
it
we
looks
can
habitable
see.
from there.
You know,
but it most definitely is not.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about The Martian, when they show the sky, they show the sky as completely black. I'm talking about the film.
Yeah.
They show the sky as completely black. They don't show it like that at all. No. Because the science guys have gone, well, it would just be black.
Yeah. Even though our own rover
so what is that?
Contradicts that. Yeah.
What is that? Now, you can see there's no dust at close. It's not a dust storm, and even if it is, it's very fine. You know, it's not obstructed. Whatever that picture is, there's something woefully wrong with the atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, is that their argument for having a filter? I mean, why filter it? Why? I just don't understand. If you're on an exploration for science, surely you want to give the most purest of data possible.
When you've been calling it the red planet and you show people it's blue and grey, maybe they're going to get upset.
Well, if it's that red, it should have a lot more iron in it. I don't know.
It definitely does. Whatever this is, well, you know what? I think we've done a longer intro than Richard would have done anyway.
Yeah,
so
let's see where it goes.
Let's see where we go.
Do these anomalies provide evidence that all the images from the Mars rovers are in fact being taken from remote locations on the Earth? Coming up in today's show, we examine more evidence and discuss the possible reasons why this might have been done. Now let's come on to impossible weather, Andrew. We just need to point out what the Martian atmosphere is like first. It's composed primarily of carbon dioxide, 95.3%, and is 100 times less dense than the Earth. The atmospheric pressure is much lower than on Earth, 600 pascals compared to 100,000 101,000 pascals on Earth. Current scientific thinking states that there is no liquid water on Mars, and it can only exist as vapor or ice due to the atmospheric conditions. So just expand on that for us, Andrew. Why can't you have rain or flowing water on Mars?
Yeah, well, if the atmospheric pressure is much lower, then any water that would normally be in a liquid form will immediately, because there's no pressure to make it sort of form into a liquid, it just becomes vapor. So you don't have liquid water, and of course because the temperature is very cold, then you wouldn't get really droplets of vapor, or particles of vapor, whatever you want to call them. It would form layers of ice. So
it's either ice or vapor, not running water, or droplets and that kind of thing.
Because of the low pressure.
All right, well, let's look at this next image, which appears to show some sort of moisture on the lens of the rover, which it could be dust, but you would say it's not, or we would say it's not dust because it clears up a day or two later.
Right. So I mean, I hadn't seen this image before you brought it to my attention. I think it was Douglas that mentioned it to you. And so what are we looking at? Why is this dust? I mean, we don't really know for sure, but as my understanding, they don't have any way of cleaning the lenses. So if this dust is blown up from the surface and somehow stuck to the lens, it should stay there forever. There's no way to clean it off, or until there's another sufficient gust of wind to blow it all off again. Is that what happened? Well,
there's no windscreen wipers.
There's no windscreen wipers that I'm aware of.
Right. So also in this image, we see, if we look carefully at the soil and we animate the soil over a period of about 7 days, by putting one image next to in a sequence, we can see that clearly the soil looks like it's damp and is moving in a particular direction.
Because that's the real giveaway. You can see there's definitely something soaking away into the sand over the subsequent days. I mean, it's really glaringly obvious, and yet NASA's still claiming there's no water on Mars.
So would you say that shouldn't be able to happen on Mars either, Andrew?
I mean, I think we've got to come in there, really. I mean, to me, as Douglas was saying, that now obviously we're looking at pictures that they've sequenced.
Yeah, the point of light is changing when they switch it between,
because it's drying out through the day, effectively.
Yeah.
But what we're going to have to do, which I hadn't thought to do before just now, which I don't know why I hadn't thought to do, we need to have a look at which Martian day that was and plot it against the position of the sun. Because what they've done with that lens is they've made it so incredibly fish-eyed. I mean, it looks like you're on a planet the size of a golf course.
But the aspect ratio hasn't changed, has it?
But the problem is, the size of everything is so distorted. So the problem you've got is that everything in the middle looks absolutely gigantic. So the sun, I mean, where's the centre of that sun? It's almost...
I think the first picture, the sun was off-centre, and then the second picture was more centred. Obviously, the rover was static for a long period of time while it was doing experiments or whatever. And you could see the surface, like he said, the patination of the surface change.
You can, but what I'm trying to understand is what exactly is the arrangement of the ground they're on there? Is that a hill?
You can never tell. I don't think you could. Like you said, with the way the lens is curvatured like a fisheye, it's very difficult to tell.
This isn't this isn't Curiosity. We've gone back to Spirit or something.
This is one of the more recent rovers, because you can see the experiment arm that goes out is quite robust.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
but it's not. It's. Oh, maybe you're right. That is, those wheels are.
Those are it's one of the more recent rovers.
That's Curiosity.
Curiosity,
rover. Yeah, no, you're right. And yet that picture is absolutely abominable.
Yeah, and I think they make a very good point. I mean, why don't they have wipers? I guess you wouldn't want to risk smudging it or damaging it if there was something that could scratch the lens. So I guess you don't want to take that risk.
You could have the tiniest can of compressed air that could just...
There's no reason why. I mean...
that would last for freaking for years
Well,
because you're in virtually no pressure, so the acceleration would be massive.
Yeah, you only need a tiny squirt of it.
Tiny, like a cubic millimeter.
Well positioned, yeah.
And if it was at liquid pressure, that would last for ages. You'd only have to use it once a week. And yet, is there anything in that we'll have to have a proper look through?
I don't know if the spec of the actual lens has anything like that. I would have thought you'd want a redundancy like that. You wouldn't want something completely blocking the lens. Not that the lens is the most important thing in the world. I don't know if it relies on the lens to see where it's going. It already has a plotted map, which is, I guess, it is controlled from satellite navigation.
There's not enough satellites to navigate around Mars.
Well, some sort of plotted course that they've already predetermined. I don't know.
I think that must be incredibly, because it must base. I think a lot of it has to be autonomous. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, we're just speculating now, which is obviously fairly. But in my opinion, it would have to have some sort of system where, as it's going forward, when one of on a modern day Land Rover or something, when one of the wheels becomes obstructed, it transfers power around the system to get.
That's a limited slip differential. These are independently controlled wheels, and they have sensors for slip for each one of them. So another wheel could take the load instantaneously, and it's computer controlled. So it will be that's not a problem. I don't know.
What I mean is the whole thing would have to be. You wouldn't be telling it every time it bumped into a stone. It wouldn't send a message back to Earth saying
it has to have a sensor. It has to have an obstruction sensor that will.
Well, not just a sensor, but an algorithm. It has to have a system to get past most obstructions, right?
I would have thought so.
Because if you tell it to go forward 5 meters and it makes 1 millimeter and hits something it doesn't understand, it's not going to wait until you tell it to go left or right. It's got to have some sort of automation to it.
Yeah, I would have thought it has to be predetermined, but let's see. I don't know where it's going to go.
Well, it's not according to what they tell us about the atmosphere.
I think it's just colour changes in the sand as the moisture drains into the sand. I don't think the sand itself is actually moving.
Right.
I mean, one thing we did talk about in email, I think, Richard, is to be more sure of this, we'd need to say, let's just say, for example, we were able to find out where these rovers really were if they were on the Earth. We would need to try and find out the weather conditions for that place, and then see if we could match those with anything that was shown on the sequence of rover images. That's one thing we haven't looked at, and I'd be interested from anybody that would be able to do that.
Right, and we've got another pair of images there which were obviously taken at different times, slightly different angle, which suggests that perhaps the soil has moved from one to the other.
And this is something that Charles Schultz has he had on his website. I don't know whether it's in his book, that we've seen. We can clearly see evidence that it looks like there's been some type of water flow which has smoothed over some of the grooves on the ground. The channels that are filled up with silt. It's pretty clear to me that this is what's happened in these images.
Now we come on to the cleaning events, because I think it's the Opportunity rover. Its solar panels became dusty, and therefore they weren't getting as much power, and the thing conked out, I believe. Is that correct? At some point?
Yeah, very nearly conked out. I think they even claimed that the memory on the rover was starting to malfunction due to lack of power. And then miraculously, the solar panels were suddenly clean again.
Right. So the solar panels were suddenly clean. Now they put this down to some kind of sandstorm. Just to tell us about that, Douglas.
Yeah, well, they've given us photographs with dust devils going past in the background. So they're claiming that these dust devils have been periodically cleaning the solar panels. But actually, there's an article.
That is definitely footprints.
You're talking about on the bottom right hand side.
Yeah, that looks to me like footprints. I'm sorry, and if that that looks like a dusty solar panelled Martian rover. It doesn't look like something that's taken from the test rover, because why would it be covered in dust if it was a test rover?
The interesting thing, obviously, that's made up of 1, 2, 3,
it's
4,
a mosaic,
5,
of course,
6, 7, 8, 9.
It's a mosaic, yeah.
Let's say it's made up of 20 pictures. There is a bit of a problem though, that there seems to be a collection of footprints bottom right. And no matter what happened, why has that happened? I mean, they look suspiciously like the sort of boots you'd wear
And
if you're in. I don't know.
That doesn't look like a test range photo to me. It doesn't look like something that you would take on the test range. The light looks similar to the light that they actually advertise on all the Mars photos they give us. You know, the sun position that's reflecting off of the solar panel as well. I mean, it just looks like an Earth picture.
What is that star in the middle?
That's where the camera rotates.
Okay, so I see. That's
Yeah.
okay. I see. So it's pointing
It
right
can't.
down.
It can't look down.
It's got a blind spot. It's got
Yeah,
a blind
it's got a blind spot.
Okay, but the problem with that. Okay, so let's just get a couple of things straight here. This is which one? The Spirit,
Yeah, this is one of the earlier ones. Yeah,
or
Opportunity.
Opportunity, rather.
I think. Yeah.
So Opportunity. Let's face it. You wouldn't take Opportunity to Devon Island because it's solar powered. You'd have to take it to somewhere like Arizona,
Yeah. Well.
where it's really sandy. Because it needs lots of sun.
Yeah.
You couldn't take it to Devon Island; it wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, especially
Plus
not in winter. No.
And it would get covered in ice. Now, of course, that's a problem on Mars
That's more of a problem on Mars.
because
The temperature's lower and the
what would
sunlight's
happen
less.
would be that as you went from really, really cold at night, and it got to sort of like 20 degrees. I mean, okay, you're very close to the triphase of water, but as it started to warm up, that sort of, it wouldn't be dew, but you would get sort of moisture in the, not moisture, but you could very possibly get ice on the solar panels.
Yes, if there was any form of moisture in there,
And then,
which there's not meant to be.
because it would be far more likely to to form on a solar panel than it would on any of the sand. You know, because that's you know how it works.
That's a flat surface that's not absorbent. It's not going to be.
Exactly. Well, when you've
It
got
will
no
stick on there.
water in the desert, you get a bit of plastic and put it over a cup, and then you wait for the condensation to
With a stone in the middle to get
Exactly.
condensation to get
exactly,
water.
and you
Yes.
get your water. That would be far more perceptible to condensation. But I think probably the triphase is so low on Mars, it wouldn't.
Yeah, the atmosphere problem comes into play here, where you wouldn't be able to get that amount of moisture to have that problem. I don't think.
For me personally, also the temperature is such a big problem. I think I mean, I've never tested what would happen if you put a solar panel in a freezer with the light on, with a UV ray. But it's got to be massively impacted, surely.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
It just I mean, to me, once again, I think this comes back to sort of Richard's point about the Opportunity rover. Opportunity, looking at it, it's just let's get 7 billion out of that one. But it just, to me, it just seems like we were talking about, like they've gone backwards in time. Like all the technology they learned from the moon landings, they completely lost before they built Opportunity. If you'd had a fuel cell, there's no way you'd have sent a solar system to Mars.
No.
It's totally inadequate.
Yeah, it's. Anyway, let's see where it goes.
Okay.
New Scientist saying that all these cleaning events have happened in the middle of the night, which seems unlikely. With if dust devils is the
dust devil will be more likely to occur during the day. You think?
That's right, but also the Martian atmosphere is something like 1/200th of the density of the Earth's atmosphere.
So any wind is going to be 1/200th times less powerful.
Exactly.
Right. So it's difficult to think how something like that could clean a solar panel that's become covered in dust.
That's right. And
in some of the images, people have alleged that the cleaning has been highly selective. In that some of the hinges, there's a photograph where you showed me of some of the hinges of the rover appear to be sparkling clean with no dust on them, and the solar panels more dust on them.
That's right. There was a very, very interesting article by Ted Twinemeyer saying that some of the solar panels appeared to have been cleaned whilst others hadn't. Also, the hinges on the solar panels appeared to be clean when the solar panels were still dirty, and he even believes there are fingerprints in the dust on the solar panels.
Right. So we could have a look at this image here, which appears to show a finger or a thumbprint on the edge of the solar panel. If we just zoom in on that, and one thing I was going to do is perhaps do some calculations on that, what appears to be a fingerprint, just to see if it's the right size.
Well, to me, the problem with this
It's a good argument to me, personally.
Well,
Look at the recess on those bolts. It's much bigger than the recess on the panels, isn't it?
The problem with that idea is, why would you clean the hinges and not the solar panels? Surely if you're going to clean anything, you clean the solar panels.
Unless they had to change... Unless the guy that looks after the machine in Devon Island had to change the solar panel.
But if you change the solar panels, then they...
To a dirtier one, is what I'm saying.
No, but why would the hinges be clean? Well, one of the things about the hinges is they're smooth, and the solar panel isn't. The solar panel is more...
The hinge isn't smooth. It has the recess for the bolts, and the recess is a lot deeper than the actual recesses in the solar panel paneling.
That's true. I see what you're saying.
It's not collecting dust.
Saying...
It's not collecting dust where you have these recesses. I can't point them out to you, but you can have the recesses within the solar panels between each other.
You're talking about...
Yeah, all those... Yeah. And then you look at the recess in the bolt there. Well, there's nothing in there.
So that would suggest to me that someone came along with a can of compressed air, blew the dust out, and tightened them up.
That would suggest to me that they needed to adjust the tightness of them for some reason, and it's been tampered with physically.
Because
that's what that suggests to me. It's a very good point he's making here, and I that from an engineering perspective, if you're going to collect dust anywhere, a well of a bolt. A recess for a bolt is somewhere the dust collects all the time.
I think, see, to me, I think that
that's why they have dust covers. That's why dust covers exist for bolts in these days. You look at a brake caliper of a car, the bolts that go into that have a dust cover on them usually.
But I don't think that the dust would be. Dust would collect how fine the dust is on Mars would be a much bigger problem for
but we're looking at components that are exposed for the same amount of time here.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that how fine the powderiness of the dust on Mars, I think it'd be a much bigger problem for a solar panel. I think it would blow out of the well of a bolt thing like that.
I disagree. I think the well is a lot deeper. The recesses are a lot deeper than the solar panel recesses.
Yeah, but it wouldn't get stuck like it would in a solar panel. I mean, to me, I don't know if that's. The possible thumbprint is a concern.
I think it's a good argument, personally.
If you look at the shadow here, well, I'm calling it shadow, but the sort of, there's no dust around here either, around the edges.
As if it's been replaced, as if it's been moved and replaced.
I don't know, almost, it's almost as if like the eddies of the wind have sort of made it gather. There's something about, look, you can see there's like a little sort of collection of it there. Almost like the sort of... But the problem to me is I don't think the Martian atmosphere would be strong enough to do that.
Yeah, you put it in a wind tunnel and you get vortices that obviously hit certain edges and create certain flows of
and that's
patination.
Almost what that looks like to me.
And that's kind of maybe what's causing those sort of things.
If you also look like there's sort of dust in this side but not in that side. But I don't understand. To me, if they'd gone and cleaned the solar panels would be cleaned. Douglas is saying that it stopped working, the memory went funny, so they went and cleaned the solar panels. But that's not what that picture is. That picture is...
I think that's a picture of a dirty solar panel, but what they're trying to demonstrate is if the solar panel is so dirty at this point, why aren't the components that have deeper recesses as dirty as the solar panel?
Okay, but this is a hinge, isn't it?
That's the hinge, but that's not the bolts that connect the hinge to the solar panel.
No, but if it hinged all the way over so it was closed, these two would be... this and this would be against each other. so there wouldn't be anywhere for dust to get
Well,
in.
the hinge is not meant to close. The hinge is there to adjust the solar panel to pick up the maximum light.
But what if
wherever it is.
it had a program in it to close for when it got really cold or something?
I don't think it closes. I don't think it clamps down completely. I can't imagine it would. Why would you? The only reason it would clamp down completely is to compact it for the launch, and then that's it. You don't want to compact it again. It's a one-off use. It's there to compact it for space travel, and then once it's landed, it's meant to stay open. I mean, otherwise you have no chance of charging. I mean, I don't.
What about something
sense.
like micrometeorites? I mean, what if it closed when there was no light?
You know, why would you waste power with a hinge, with a motor and a hinge when you're trying to conserve power? Why would you want to close your major source of generation?
Well, because there's no atmosphere, remember. So a meteorite the size of a pebble could go straight through your solar panel.
I don't think that they would risk having to close that, because what if it doesn't open again? What if you don't have enough power to open it again? You know, these are things that you have to think about. I mean, you're looking to try and the longevity of this machine to work.
The problem is, of course, the cold.
Yeah, well,
It's only got batteries. That's all it's got. It's got batteries that charges up from sunlight from being 40 million miles further away from the sun than us. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily one clue that makes me worry about the Opportunity rover.
it's a combination of things.
It's just everything together. It just seems like it doesn't seem to have the design integrity of something like Apollo. It just doesn't seem like it's just almost as if it was designed by people who have never dealt with Mars, who don't really get it.
There were many limitations, you know. There were many things that were being tried for the first time at Spirit and Opportunity that, you know, they probably would never have transferred over to the later version. So, you know, let's carry on to see what happens.
For a fingerprint. It certainly seems unlikely that if a solar panel has got so dirty that it can no longer recharge a battery, that it's starting to malfunction, that suddenly it all comes back to life again.
If you park your car in the street for 6 months, it gets really dirty. Does it ever end up clean again?
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Well, I suppose the rain might, but then of course there's no rain on Mars. So.
Yeah. Now, I've included some of the NASA images from Apollo, just to show that that there's proof that NASA do fake their images, right, on the moon landings. Yeah. So we're just going to look at a few of them now. So this is evidence of previous faking. That's why I've put this in. A chap called David Percy has taken 4 NASA images, which is NASA image AS17134-20437 to 20443, and he stitched them together because they're different sections of the moon. And then he's taken another set, NASA image AS171472294 to 22521, and he stitched those together. So he's got 2 composite images and he's compared them, and we can see there. Tell us the anomaly that we're looking at.
Yeah, so that image is essentially you have a problem with the parallax, because the backdrop for those 2 sets of images is identical, or it's very nearly identical, and yet in one image we have the lunar module in the foreground, fairly close to the camera, and then in the other it's way over to the right, and we have an astronaut, whichever one it is, I don't know, in the foreground. Yet the backdrop is identical, as if we're, you know, what are the chances of having the camera pointed with exactly the same field of view?
And just to explain the problem with that, Andrew, and that is that the lunar lander that you see there in the foreground lands on the surface of the moon, and then when the astronauts leave, the top part kind of explodes away, and then they get back to Earth.
Yeah, so there's no way for it to move after it's landed.
So the lander can't move on the surface of the moon at all. It has to stay in the same position. We see it in 2 different positions on the same mission.
Yeah.
So people have looked at this and have concluded that what you're looking at there is a stage set with the front projection system generating the artificial background on there.
Right.
Probably with the help of Stanley Kubrick.
Something like that, yeah, because he was using that method in 2001: A Space Odyssey around the same time.
The Mars rover missions, or Mars rover deception, in my opinion, is it's a continuation in many ways of the Apollo deception. All the evidence suggests that Stanley Kubrick faked a lot of the moon photographs on one of his big sets, and perfected techniques for joining, or as best as possible, joining the foreground with the background to create the illusion of a whole landscape. But of course, you can do that now using CGI. So you can film outdoors and put in whatever background you like. Which is exactly what I think they're doing, because obviously they need to disguise whatever skyline, whatever is in the background, which is likely to give away their location. They would need to replace that with something less identifiable.